Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Red Tar practice and contemplation. Hope everybody's well on this fine Saturday morning. And we're contemplating very methodically, very thoroughly the book Change of Heart, a compilation between Chagdud Rinpoche and Lama Shempen. And Rinpoche is spending a lot of time contemplating the destructiveness and the uselessness of anger, because if we don't do the thorough contemplation bit by bit, minutiously, thoroughly, then there's always going to be a little opening for anger to come in because we're going to feel justified. One thing that I'm seeing right now here in Brazil is we just had very contentious elections, and the media and the big interests and the political parties, they create a frenzy, a hysteria, and people get swept up in it and they feel justified to be angry or even to practice acts of violence because they feel like the other side is so evil and so terrible. So if we have a little bit of opening that we can justify anger or violence, it'll find a way to seep in. So that's why we have to do such a thorough, minutious contemplation to close all the little gaps. It's like a dam. If there's a little crack in the dam, slowly the water will erode it away and you'll have a huge flood. It's the same thing with anger. If we leave a little opening for anger to come in, it'll find a way and it'll become a big problem. So here's another very, very interesting question. Rinpoche, many of the people I work with were abused as children and remain very vulnerable to anyone who may hurt or take advantage of them. I've always thought that if a person can express and act on his or her anger, even a little, then they can begin to heal the past. Rinpoche answers, from one perspective, she may feel some relief when she realizes that she's angry about previous experiences. But this just involves revisiting the painful past. Rather than encouraging her to bring the past into the present, help her to move forward. Reenactment merely supports the idea that it is helpful to be angry in the present. It is better not to deal with anger at all than to reinforce it. If we are revolted by a face in a mirror, we can vent our anger at it by smashing the glass. But if we look in another mirror, we will see the same face. Similarly, we need to resolve our anger, or we will see it reflected everywhere we go. Through contemplation, we can examine whether this emotion is ever justified or useful. Thinking about the suffering it brings to individuals and families, as well as communities and nations, we conclude that it merely harms ourselves and others, and finally cut through our habit of giving in to anger. Although it may prove difficult, working with anger is preferable to acting out on it. As you walk down a long path, you might risk taking a treacherous shortcut and in the process break your leg. It would make more sense to choose the long, careful way around. In the same way, instead of trying to find short-term release by expressing your anger, it is better to go the long way around and work with it. Gradually, you will learn how to let it subside. Otherwise, the pillow you beat might someday become someone's face. Here's another question. But if someone has repressed their anger for a long time, they may not respond appropriately to a threat. Isn't this a case where anger is useful? And again, Rinpoche insists, anger is never useful. It is a product of our confused mind, like seeing a rope and mistaking it for a snake. Anger always seems to arise in response to something external. But if we look more closely at its nature, we will find that it is empty, illusory. It has no more reality than the snake. The experience of self and environment in this dream of life is like the snake. Understanding that the dream is not true is like recognizing that the snake is merely a rope. Believing the dream to be true and responding angrily to the circumstances within it only makes the dream worse. Through meditation, we learn to resolve anger by recognizing its true nature. Our awareness can radiate through anger, like sunlight through water, without attachment or aversion. Nothing needs to be suppressed, yet at the same time, nothing needs to be engaged. This is such a profound part of the Buddhist practice. Most of the time, we only see two options: expressing or repressing. And through meditation, we learn there's a third option, which is dissolving it back into its true nature. We all know intellectually that a thought or an emotion can't last forever, right? Of course not. Eventually it goes away. If it goes away, it means that it doesn't really have a true existence. If it had a true existence, it couldn't go away. It would have to be there forever. So through awareness, we accelerate the process of emotions and thoughts simply going back into their true nature, which is empty of a true inherent existence. That's what we mean by emptiness. Empty of a true inherent existence. Empty doesn't mean nothingness. Empty simply means doesn't have a true, lasting, solid, real existence. And because of that very fact, if we train in awareness, like Rinpoche says so beautifully here, our awareness shines through the emotions and the thoughts, the same way that sunlight shines through water. And when we let our awareness shine through the negative thoughts and emotions, by their own nature, without having to do anything else, they dissolve.